Hi everyone, it's David Ryle with Trellis for Tomorrow, and I am in the beautiful garden at Eagle View, the Eagle View Community Garden, which is one of our Food for All partners with Hankin Group. And I want to spend some time doing a little bit of a virtual spring garden check. It is late April and we're checking on the crops. But I want to begin by talking about these row covers, which you can see are over the majority of the beds here. And you may have row covers like these in your garden, so I want to talk a little bit about their use, their importance, how you can care for them, how to use them. So we're going to spend some time talking about that just at the beginning. So let's get started. Row covers like these are really valuable, particularly with organic gardening or organic farming. You'll find them on farms and gardens that are trying to utilize best practices for sustainability and organic growing. Something like this serves a couple different purposes. One is a frost barrier. So depending on the thickness of the row cover, you can buy yourself 2, 3, 4, sometimes as much as 6 degrees of protection. So you could get down conceivably to 27, 26 degrees of a frost, and your plants underneath would still be okay. So the first use of these row covers is a barrier against frost. So they're used a lot of times in the spring and in the fall, but obviously this is also a really great barrier for the pests that would be getting in. This year during the COVID-19 crisis, we're employing row covers quite a bit more on our spring crops. Our spring crops are usually crops that prefer the cool weather and do really well against frost. Even if they're exposed to frost, a lot of them will bounce back as long as the roots don't get damaged. So using row cover is not a must for a lot of these crops, but there are a lot of pests that start to emerge in the spring as the soil warms up, and they love some of these spring crops. So having a row cover over the crops and in the bed not only protects them against frost, but can really be a huge lifesaver for the plants against the kinds of pests that are on the lookout for these crops. The ones that are most susceptible to damage are the brassicas, which are your cabbages, your broccoli, cauliflower, your kales, your collards. There is a moth called the cabbage looper, which loves these crops and will hunt them down and lay eggs, and those eggs become little worms or caterpillars that kind of chew the entire plant up and then make more moths. So having row cover can be a big lifesaver, as I said, for these crops. We're going to take a closer look at how to put these on and how to uncover and recover, which I think is a very important piece. So these row covers are usually held in place using a couple different things. One are metal hoops that create kind of a tunnel, which holds the row cover sort of floating over top of the crop so that the row cover isn't sitting directly on top or resting on top of the crops, which is really important. And that row cover is held in place using what are called landscape staples. They're like really, really long staples that go into the soil. There is a good or right way of getting this row cover to sort of hover over place and to stay in place, and then there are less ideal ways of keeping the row cover over. Anything really works, even if it's not ideal. Any kind of covering is a good thing, but we're going to take a quick look and talk about the differences between ideal and less than ideal techniques for keeping your row cover in place over top of your crops. So we're going to take a look at these two beds right here. The bed on the right has row cover in place. It does have landscape staples holding it down at certain points. We can see one right here. I think that there's a couple more at the other end, but all the way down the side there are no staples in place. Actually, there's one in the middle, which is holding it down. But you can see the row cover is kind of slooping down, and as the wind comes, it's picking up the row cover and moving it all around. And that wind over time, especially during these violent windy spring weather days, will get under this row cover and really start to tear it away from those landscape staples. So having this much give in the row cover, having it droop and having it not secured against the frame, can cause this to tear and get tattered very, very quickly. Now, the bed here on the left is As you can see, there's no drooping going on. This has actually been done really, really well. What you're looking to do, and we'll talk a little bit about how to accomplish this, but you do want the row cover on top to be as taut as possible, so that it's not drooping down, and you want the sides really secured in place so the wind's not getting under. You can see over here we've got row cover blowing around in the wind, but there's very, very little movement here. And this is very easy to do, so we'll talk about quickly just how to do that. So when getting row cover in place, the first thing that you want to do after you get your hoops on is get the length of row cover over your bed and make sure that it's centered on place, that you have equal amounts hanging over the left and right side. If you're working with someone else, even better, because then you can work from either end, but you want to start on the ends. You want to get one end secured and then do the other end, pulling it taut against the end that's already in place. That'll give you sort of that straight line across the top, which is really what you want. Then you work on the sides. So the very first step is the ends and then the sides. Securing the row cover in place, this tip actually comes to us from Robert Burns at St. Paul's Church in Ardmore. There's different ways of using these landscape staples. You can go directly through the row cover into the soil, but Robert showed me this trick of basically rolling over the edges to pull it taut and then using the landscape staple, one end going in, you can see, pinching that roll sort of in place, the other end coming outside the board. And as this is used all the way around and on the sides, you can see there's very little air getting in to the row cover on either side, and the structure is really holding up really nicely. So this is what you want to do when you are putting the row cover on. So when you're wanting to uncover the crops or check on your crops, you're going to take that one staple off near the corner, and again at the end, and that'll enable you to look under the row cover and see what's going on, what needs attention, what you can be caring for. And then when you are finished, you're basically going to reverse all those steps. Get the row cover rolled up on the side and use that staple again to pinch it back in place, and again on the end. But at the end, you definitely want to see it really taut on the top and kind of holding in place where the wind can't really get under.